बाद की बात करेंगे अभी. Okay, so Shefali, maybe let's give it another minute because I can see a lot of people joining.
Yeah, maybe.
So let's give it another minute.
30 is a good number who have joined on time. Joining on time, 30 is good.
Daba Sahab, how are you?
All well, great. Sir, you need to have an assistant 24 into 7. 24 into 7.
Into 7.
24 into 7. 24 into 7 because always you are always sought after speaker.
On that word into afterwards. Along with GP.
No, Akhil क्या कर रहे हैं? 24 into 7 multiply कर रहे हैं. 7 2s are 140. वो उसमें लग गया वो 168 है अखिल.
GP ये बिमल तो एकदम हेडमास्टर की तरह इतना बड़ा होमवर्क दे दिया यार.
होमवर्क दिया यार, समर से फिर रिमाइंड भी करवाया.
मुझे मिला कि नहीं.
अखिल मुझे लगता है आप किसी और का पेपर उठा के ले गए हो. मैंने ऐसा कुछ भी नहीं भेजा था. अब चेक करो क्या उठा के लाए हो.
देखो मेरा ये जो हैंडराइटिंग है जो मैं खुद नहीं पढ़ सकता हूँ.
Vimal is a coach, so he has the habit of asking questions.
Correct, sir. Advance, you can. I'm learned from some people whom you know. But anyway, I think Shefali, let's kick off.
Yeah, I think we should start. That's how it happens.
Good evening, GP.
Hi, good evening, Rotel Malhotra.
Good evening, GPR.
Good evening, sir. Yeah, I think Shefali, you can mute us, then we can start.
Sure. Okay. Good evening. Today it's a great evening because we have a great panel discussion, very relevant. The best topic for the time. Best topic for the time. And thanks to Dr. GP Rao who suggested this topic most appropriate. We are all struggling with this subject. Being HR professionals, everybody is looking up to us, and we feel that this is the best time for us to contribute, to prove ourselves. And we have great panelists. All our panelists, they don't require introduction. They are all people of name and fame. They are very reputed in the HR field. And we are very, very lucky to have Dr. Akhil Busrai, Dr. GP Rao, Neelam Dhakaji, and Devjani Roy ji, and Vimal, Mr. Bimal Ratna as the moderator, and Shefali, who is our permanent host, wonderful host. She has created a record of hosting webinars since last 1 year. Today, we were supposed to have our great event, physical event in Delhi, the National HR Awards of National HR Leadership Awards of HR India, followed by this particular panel discussion. But pandemic has played the villain, as you know, so we had to postpone it to better times, safer times. But we decided to go ahead with this panel discussion since it was already announced, and then the subject was very relevant for today. It will help all of us, this subject, and listening to the experts, it will give us a lot of insight into the issues, and they will also tell us, they will also give us tips on how to go about it, and how this is the best time, and how we can contribute, and how we can meet the expectations of our stakeholders. So I welcome all of you, and I request my colleague Shefali to introduce each one of you, our esteemed panelists, esteemed moderator. Thanks to all of you for sparing your time, and thanks to the great audience who have joined on time. And now, once this pandemic comes in, we always see that too many webinars start happening, and webinars start competing with each other, and then overlapping webinars and all that. So still we have a great audience today. Thanks to the audience for being with us today. Over to you, Shefali.
Thank you, sir. So a pleasure talking to all of you. Very good evening from HR India, from my side. Welcome all the eminent speakers, panelists, moderators, and the wonderful audience who have joined. I am Shefali. As always, I am the host, and sir has also introduced me. So a very small introduction about who we are and what we are doing today. So HR India and Mr. Samar Mahapatra are organizing this most weighted panel discussion, I should say. HR India is a community which is going to be very soon 10,000 plus members all across the country. And the credit goes to Mr. Samar Mahapatra, who does a lot for this community and brings in people together. By profession, Mr. Samar happens to be an industry expert with over 30 years of experience, and currently he is designated as CHRO with Shigan Group. Today, we are going to have a panel discussion on the topic best time for HR to add value to the organization. And I think I will not do justice if I elaborate the topic. Let the speakers and the moderator take this up. Going by the alphabetical order, I'll just introduce the speakers and the moderator of the day. So our first eminent panelist, Dr. Akhil Busrai. He is currently Chief Executive Officer, Busrai Consulting, ex-Executive Director, HR, IBM, multi-award winner, and a leader who is very compassionate and passionate. Welcome, Dr. Busrai, to the panel today.
Thank you.
Our moderator of the day, Mr. Bimal Rath, an entrepreneur and author supporting organizations to best leverage their talent. He is Chairman, Non-Executive Director, Brahmin Net Solutions, and ex-HR Director, Nokia. Welcome, Mr. Bimal Rath. And after the introductions, the stage will be all yours for the moderation, sir. Thank you so much. Our second speaker of the day is Ms. Debjani Roy, the Bengal Tigress, brings with her 26 plus years of industry experience, currently working as CHRO with Mind Your Fleet, very passionate about her work, and she lives in and out HR day and night. Welcome, Ms. Debjani Roy. Our third speaker of the day, Dr. GP Rao. Sir is with his own consulting, GPR Consulting. He is ex-Chief Human Resource Officer and MS with Recron Malaysia, a multi-award winner and a gem of a person I have known so far. Our next speaker is Ms. Neelam Dhaka, General Manager HR, Rico Auto Industries. Ma'am is ex-L&D, Head of CNH Industrial. She brings with a rich experience and of entire gamut of HR. I think there is so much to speak about all the eminent speakers, panelists, and the moderators of the day, but I had to be very crisp because Mr. Samar requested me that the best of the panel should come out, so that so many audience coming up and so many in waiting list also should have the best of the session, because as such it was planned to be in person, but because of the current pandemic situation, we are doing it virtually. So to have the best of the session, I will not take much of time. Over to you, Mr. Bimal Rath. Thank you.
Thank you, Shefali, and thank you, Samar, for inviting me. And I think my role as a moderator, just to make sure that we are all on the same page. I think the format is that I'm going to ask questions to our panelists, and I'd request them to sort of try to be as clear and crisp as possible in answering the questions. And then of course, as we go through, there likely to be more follow-up questions, etc. What we will also do is that if the audience has any questions, please put it on the chat box. All of you have a chat box as part of the Zoom facility. So if there are any questions from the audience, we will try to take them as we go along, or at the end. We'll decide depending on the questions which come in. But feel free to put the questions on the chat box, because we can pick it up as we go along. So from a topic perspective, as we said, this is the best time for HR to add value. Okay, so let me deep dive a little bit and go straight to GP. And so GP, why do you think this is the best time? Because it also feels like saying that they were never the best time for HR to add value, and suddenly now HR is to add value. So what's your perspective on that?
Good evening to all. Bimal, it's a right thing to start best time. Best time is the opportune time. Best time doesn't mean that it's the only time. So we had opportunities, probably this is the best opportunities, where there is adversity, there is ambiguity. This is the best time to test your agility, best time to add value. So value in terms of productivity per employee, value in terms of creating the right culture in the organization, value in terms of caring for people. So there are three values: value in terms of money, value in terms of values, and value in terms of respect and care for people. I call it best time because there is adversity and ambiguity.
Yeah, I think I'll GP, come back to that thing about opportunity, because I believe that there always was opportunity. Maybe there is more opportunity now, and and that is perhaps the issue you are pointing out.
Yeah, it's relatively.
Yeah. So let me ask you a slightly different question, and maybe a follow-up question to that. When you say opportunity, is it an opportunity which is because of the immediate crisis, or is there something else happening in the environment which is providing this opportunity?
Primarily, it came from the crisis. Later, other things developed. But the first stroke was the crisis. The crisis has thrown up leadership vacuum. The crisis has thrown up preparedness for managing risk. The crisis has thrown challenges on what is right talent for organization. So all happened. So it started with that. Now a lot of realization has happened. A lot of things are getting exposed and unearthed. And HR has got a best opportunity to provide the right talent in the organization, right climate in the organization, right motivation in the organization, right development in the organization. And I mean, ultimately, what is value? The employees do the best in the organization.
Yeah. So let me go to Akhil, and Akhil, a slightly different question, because GP spoke about the right timing kind of a thing. But if you look at the timing, I think there are two things happening, right? So if you look at the stock market and you look at some companies, actually they are doing outstandingly well. Okay, but there is also a large number of companies which are unfortunately, some have of course shut down shops, particularly in the MSME sector. But also there are many companies which are struggling, trying to come to terms with many different challenges which the pandemic has thrown up and the last year has thrown up. Whether it is financial, manpower, business model, many other things, right? So what kind of a role do you see HR playing, particularly in helping businesses revive? Not the ones which are already successful, but the ones which are actually facing challenges. And maybe I should break that into two parts. What do you see 2-3 of the critical challenges for these businesses, and where do you think HR can play a role?
First of all, thank you, Bimal, Shefali, and Samar for inviting me. It's a good forum to meet fellow HR professionals. And I like the way GP put the context that it is a crisis which has brought HR into the forefront. And to respond to your query, there are times when you get a spotlight in the sun. Throughout the time, we crave for spotlight, we do get spotlight, but it is not always there in terms of being given. Now that the entire crisis has moved to people solution, and like you rightly said, some of the medium-sized organizations, manufacturing organizations are suffering. So HR comes into a play now because it's a custodian of people resource in the organization. What they do and what they don't do will make a big impact. Coming to the revival part, I think the most important thing that HR will have to do is not go back to HR. I think we are notorious that since I'm in HR, I can be critical, self-critical. Once the crisis is over, we go back to routine things, managing same processes and things that we are so comfortable with. Now is the time to seriously align. And when I say seriously align, I mean it to the T. Align with the business and find out how is it that we can help business revive. I like the word you use, not just survive or grow, revive. A lot of businesses have seen downtime. And in doing so, one has to understand what is it that the business wants to do right now. There'll be tremendous pressure for more, for less from business. Cost is a priority. Saving cost, getting market share back, reviving the lost business of last 15, 18 months. All this will not happen with time. Some organizations will buckle in. This is the time HR will have to stand up to say, how can I use, and now that HR has got, fortunately during this crisis, has built up a large amount of credibility with the employees and line managers also. So if you notice, line managers have really started looking up to HR, kya karna hai? We are all lost. Now that advantage is not going to last for long if we don't keep on earning it. So using the advantage that we have of connection with our people and empathy that was so widely established and demonstrated by HR has given us the right opportunity. We got to leverage that and leverage that in terms of how we can revive the business. So Bimal, I'll briefly cover 2 points only. Sure. One, there is going to be demand for more for less. So all these need boxes that we have in organization charts, that Bimal will do this, Akhil will do this, GP Garu will do this, we are used to that. This is my job, this is your job. All that will disappear. And I have a very strong notion and reason to believe that 2 people will do work of 3 by necessity. Now they don't have skill to do the half work that will be given to them. Company will ask us to do peripheral work outside your job description. There's no firm job description that you will do this and I will do this.
Right.
And as a result, reskilling, how to learn quickly, is going to be the agenda for the HR. So we have to provide training, and not by conducting classes and counting how many man hours were spent, how many people attended. I think we have to get real, get our hands dirty with the business, make mistakes. It's all right to make mistakes, but make mistakes which are in the effort to help business revive.
Yeah. Thanks, Akhil. Thanks for that. So, you were speaking about, line managers' expectation and, how line managers are expecting HR to lead. So let me ask, Neelam maybe. So Neelam, what do you see has changed as far as, Akhil said that, there's an expectation that HR will somehow provide a bit of a leadership to line management. But what do you see when we talk about value, or when we talk about, adding value, or we talk about leadership from HR as far as line management? What is it that you're seeing being different now, or what is it that people are looking for?
So as Akhil sir also mentioned that, earlier HR was all about maintaining processes in HR for HR. But now most of us, even the line leaders, we are kind of lost as to how to handle these upcoming challenges and talent crunch. Typically in manufacturing organization, with number of cases, the way they are expanding and multiplying. Availability of right skill set at the right time. And they really look forward to HR to ensure that. And apart from that, the psychological safety of employees and the anxiety that all of us are experiencing in some or other way, to address that in employees by being in contact with them, and also giving the support that organization is with the employees and the family in terms of any help or crisis required. So that becomes a very important partnership. Along with that, the challenge of managing virtual teams is also very new to line managers. And to be able to say that I am having difficulty in handling this and partnering with HR to address those issues to make the teams effective is also a big step together. And somewhere culturally, I think line managers also expect now some kind of decentralization or autonomy to make decisions, to be able to deliver the results that are expected out of them. And having said that, the basic level of things, if they are right in place, then the next level of expectation is to redesign the roles and job in the current scenario where it's a hybrid workforce, some is available, some are not. And as Busrai sir said that, you will have to do additionally 2 to 3 jobs, and you cannot say that this is only my job. So also relook at the whole value chain and see where is the critical role, especially the roles where there's a value add, and do we have the right talent on those roles? And how do we do that? So that becomes very, very important in terms of the expectation. And I think extremely important is to be constantly in touch with employees to keep them engaged and keep them committed, because coming to work but still not delivering, looking at all the mental state that all of us are experiencing, is, I think, the partnership and the expectations has become so close that one function cannot coexist without the support of the other function.
So thanks, Neelam. You raised some very, very practical and sort of very specific issues in this thing. And there was a question in the chat box about should focus be shifted to empathy from being professional? And I don't think both Akhil and Neelam did mention the word empathy, but I don't think anybody is saying empathy is an opposite of professional or the other way around. I think what we are actually saying in a way is, what I picked up is that you need to be professional and empathetic, and in some ways empathetic is being professional, if I may call it that,
Very true.
at least
Very
in
true.
current context, right? So that since there was a question on the chat box, I thought I'll try and address that. So the other thing, and let me go to Debjani for a minute. So Debjani, one of the key issues is going to be also the leadership mindset, and what is it that leaders will do given the current context. And this is a very specific question. Neelam mentioned, of course, a very close partnership with line management to do several certain things. But if I look at senior leaders and I say that senior leaders need to change mindset, where do you think HR can play a role there? What is the role HR can play there?
Thank you, Bimal sir, and once again, thank you, Samarji and Shafali, for bringing us to this table together. Wonderful evening. Bimal sir, I think there is no better opportunity than now for HR to play its role of facilitation like never before. There is a huge vacuum today in terms of leadership bandwidth, not in terms of leadership availability. There are plenty in numbers, but do those leaders come with the kind of competencies which are basically required in these critical times? I think we've already made no small talk about the fact that these are unprecedented times, completely unexpected, requiring separate set of attributes and competencies from us, which probably were never as much explicit as it is being felt today. This whole new paradigm of a hybrid workforce requires a very different skill set of workforce management altogether. Akhil sir talked about completely new kind of roles and the less people multiplying into more productivity, more number of people really giving way to less number of lean and mean structures, which means that organizations themselves will not only go lean and mean, but they will actually be they will actually be professing to work out of different kinds of workforce management styles. Now, in those situations, how does a leader manage to lead that kind of a virtual syndrome? How do they actually reach out to the remote locations and make sure that they have every bit of the nerve and the pulse of the organization being brought into the mainstream? So we need leaders today who know how to lead through this change, who know how to lead through this virtual reality. Concepts like inclusion, concepts like diversity are bigger than ever before, primarily because you have the gig workforce, you have nomadic workforce, you have people who are just going to come in and ask for project working for, let's say, 3 to 6 months, and then they'll go to the next best employer. So we are going to look at scenarios which have never been experienced before, and these kind of situations will require a different level of thought leadership, which is where a collaborative and joint effort between the CHRO or the head of HR, doing that kind of coaching and doing that kind of counseling to the CEO to make sure that his inherent leadership qualities are, however, prepared even better for the times that we are experiencing today, and perhaps even for tomorrow when more challenges will surface, is lent through the kind of paradigm thought processes that an HR person brings to the table. So I think HR has a big role today, not only in preparing an organization for what it is going through learning and development, through providing different kinds of learning opportunities, for making sure that every bit of the hybrid workforce is entwined into the mainstream by some processes or other, by making sure that those old styles of looking at employee engagement gives way to employee experience. Because it is an experience today which is being talked about and not so much an engagement. Engagement probably will be a second or the third step, but let's see how employees experience the new reality first. So that is where HR will have to prepare the grounds to spell out a very different kind of work environment where the culture will be different, and the culture will once again be set by leadership, which will therefore have to demonstrate these different qualities that I just spoke about. And it is HR who's going to handhold not only the CEO, but also the CXO set across the organizations to ensure that they demonstrate those skills, which are which are going to be very critical for success for today.
Yeah, thanks, Debjani. Both you and Neelam spoke about hybrid working and virtual working, and I'd like to go back to Neelam for a minute and maybe come to Debjani. So, Neelam, can you outline maybe for line managers one very specific behavior which will require to be changed in order to manage hybrid teams? And the same question, Debjani, to you for leaders as well, that just talk to me about one behavior, one very specific behavior which requires change and where HR can help?
To me, the first thing that comes to my mind is listening. And typically, line managers are not in habit of listening. It's only mandating and expecting. But now, listening becomes very, very important, both at the psychological level and issues which are coming in completing the task, whether at physical workplace or in the hybrid virtual environment.
Yeah. Debjani, what would you say is one particular behavior or skill?
Well, I think your question to me was more with respect to leaders again. And here I would say that one of the very, very critical things that leaders have to demonstrate is authenticity. And when I talk about authenticity, when you have a physical presence of the entire workforce in front of you, there are various things that you demonstrate in person. But when you're far removed from them, and when you have to reprove your mettle as a leader who's empathetic and who's got compassion on the right side of the land, that it is important that you actually walk the talk. You are looked at as a conscientious leader. You are consistent in your behavior and collaborative in approach. I think if these 3 C's are combined together, which is being conscientious, remaining consistent, and being collaborative, these are the 3 most critical ways of transparently driving home the entire concept of authenticity. And every leader who probably treads this path will possibly have a better ratio of success than others who continue to demonstrate styles which are now going to be proving to be archaic in the new kind of a land force.
Thanks, Debjan. So let me go back to GP for a minute. And GP, you were speaking about, this being a opportune time, if I may call it that. And, Neelam and Debjani, of course, talked about several, specific issues and, in a way also qualities required in leaders and line managers, if you will, right? So what is it that you think HR can do? See, it's very easy to have a checklist of qualities, right? So we can say the leader should be compassionate, he should be authentic, they should be great at listening, this, that, and all. But I'm asking you a very pointed question from a value addition point of view, that if you were to say that, okay, these are the things we need to develop in our leaders and line managers, what would be some specific actions HR could take as a function saying, let me do 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, which will then help develop these capabilities?
I think let's go straight. If you have to develop a new set of leaders or managers in an organization, the new normal. So we'll have to see, one is managing dilemma, the other is bringing growth. So managing dilemma will be a great skill leaders have to develop. That is one we should be able to develop. Number 2, when it comes to the hybrid or a diversity, so one rule, one policy will not apply. So they have to have this inclusive approach. There will be different kinds of people, different kinds of formats. So we'll have to have a diversity approach in our thing. That's the second thing, leaders. The third and last is, it is not, you are talking about that professionalism and empathy. I'm doing research and consulting people, is integrating business and compassion on a grid. Can we develop people who are six above, 6 on business and 6 on compassion? Can we develop and take them towards the 9-9 grid? These are the 3 leadership competencies HR can develop, help them, coach them, train them, work with them to develop.
So, GP, let me, a follow-up question to that same thing, when we are talking about, and there's a question in the chat box saying, we were earlier talking about creating value, now we are talking about adding value. So in this context of, particularly developing people, firstly, and, I don't want to go into the semantics of creating or adding value. To me, they are the same thing.
Same.
But in the context of, changing mindsets, developing people, reskilling people, do you see that, HR itself will have to first tackle its own mindset? And if that is so, what are the 1 or 2 things you would advise, HR people to take a very deep look at?
Yeah, actually, when you say stakeholder, actually we are ourselves a stakeholder, correct ourselves. So I'm trying to make some words, 1 or 2. One is there is stigma that we are not weak in contextual sensitivity. We know many things, talk many things, but we can't do. So the gap between knowing and doing. So that is the first one. The second one is on the commercial acumen, the business acumen. If you understand business better, so you'll understand line, you'll understand employees, understand top management. So that is the second. And the last one, the HR can develop is, it's not talking, it's not communicating, not giving notices. Are you able to make an impact when you talk? If the three things HR can focus, I just prioritize. We can do a lot. We can do a lot.
Yeah, thanks, GP. And in fact, somebody has commented on the box. I saw Mr. Reddy has commented that, should HR be moving from process to outcomes? Of course, he's put a question mark there. But yeah, I think the impact piece is what you are mentioning.
We can do both. We can do both. And what you said is professional people are always ethical. Ethical people are always professional.
No, I think one of the things which I have learned through my career, and is that we need to be very comfortable with and when I say very often we look at the or. So we always try to find the black and white
or versus, no, it is and.
And I think you have to look at and you say this, so the person has to be this and that and that. And you need to deal with processes and outcomes and not just one at one end. So anyway, so Akhil, let me come back to you. Debjani, when we were talking about leaders, also mentioned this thing about culture. And you've done a fair amount of work around culture in different roles you've held. So let me go to you with a very specific question that all organizations are now talking about culture. Let me put it this way, okay? And I think obviously HR plays a very critical role there. But if you were to make it, if you were to deep dive and say, okay, here are the 2 or 3 very specific things HR can do to enable that culture change, what would those 2-3 things be?
Bimal, this is going to be a trendsetter and a differentiating factor. How we handle culture, and Debjani and Neelam both covered it so eloquently well. The part that nitty-gritty of actions that they're mentioning, how it will affect culture. Now, normally we think of culture as a very esoteric documentation, some training program, we believe in this, we believe in that, we have some posters on the reception. I think culture is where we act and where we are seen to be acting. Second, what we do when nobody is noticing. So to me, a deep-rooted culture is reflected when I know nobody's noticing, what will I do and not do. Now, that brings us to a very critical juncture after this crisis, that gig workers and fixed-term employment is going to be the norm. Not many organizations will invest in long-term training and development of their own people. Why not have short-term commitments? And now with the new labor code, FTE will become legitimized. Now, all this sounds very nice on paper and on surface. I think HR will have to play a role which I call the underbelly role. While we are here very eager to work with line managers and become their friends and counselors and let's work together, we are there with you. I think HR will have to step aside, and I mean it very seriously, to play the role of employee advocacy. And I'm not playing with words, Bimal. This is the time employee look up to HR to say, who's our guardian? To put it very crudely, there are many organizations which have exploited contract labor. They've exploited short-term employment. Trend will increase, unfortunately. They will all justify to say this is a business need. It's allowed by law. So why is HR objecting? I mean, this theoretical aspect of HR, we don't want to support. This is not theoretical. We are here as internal guardians of employee interests. When we sit on decision table, we should be the one morally responsible for what is good for employees. Do we have the courage to speak up and say this is not right to do for employees? I think that quality will have to develop. And whether we develop or not, it will differentiate good HR leaders with the normal ones. The real ability to tell the business that we will not bend that line in the sand. And that's what culture is all about. We will say what we stand for and we'll do exactly that. And HR will have to make sure that, while in our effort to be friends with the line managers, if somebody steps out of the line in the sand, we'll have to bring them back. We are not here to become popular function. We are here to serve a purpose. And to me, the purpose is very simple. Am I representing employees' interests on the decision table or not? If I'm not doing that, Bimal, then I'm just a box in the organization chart.
Right.
I'm letting down the people who are at time of crisis like this are looking up to HR to say, at least be there to protect our interests.
Yeah.
The business will have no time or patience not to have that interest at heart, because shortcuts, cost saving, short-term gains will take priority. And this is where HR will have to very effectively put itself in a position to influence. I'm not saying pick up a file, roll up your sleeve and bash up the line managers, but influence that if we believe in culture, we will retain that culture. Because if the culture part is only seen on paper and not implemented, it won't last very long.
Yeah, but Akhil,
And this is the time.
Sorry, Akhil, if I can just stop you and just to help you to elaborate maybe a little bit more on that. See, there is, your point on action related to culture is, I think, very well made, that, ultimately it's about acting, it's not about talking or posters or whatever else you do, right? But there's also a view, and, somebody has actually written that. So let me read that line out to you, right? It says HR managers should not think like custodians, rather they should be flexible enough to accept the changes and behave like catalysts to support businesses, right? Now, there's a very thin line between what you are saying, that how do you support the business yet act as a, custodian of employee interests? Because I don't think, again, these are not either or roles, but I think the challenge is that most HR people tend to fall in line if their seniors in the organization come and say, okay, we want to fire 40 people out of 150 because there's a cost pressure, there is this. And I think their ability to represent the employees is often, a little bit of a challenge, and this is true, whether you like it or not. When a HR head is told by the CEO that, I don't care, I just need cost cutting by, letting go of 40 people, it's not an easy task. So I'm asking you a very specific question, and, your point is well made, that how do you do it? What are those 2-3 things which a HR person could do to actually create that influence? Because, this conflict will happen, that,
Always.
yeah. So how do you deal with that conflict?
Bimal, this is real. And the quotation that you mentioned assumes that if HR people are doing this, they're not doing that. And I'll go back to your very word, that we'll have to learn to do and.
Yeah.
Now, in doing all these things about employee advocacy, I'm not suggesting we become soft. Our loyalty is to the organization as much as to the employee advocacy. We cannot play one role and let go the other. And I like the word you used. Instead of or, we'll have to do and. Now, coming to a specific, that if the organization requires number cutting by 40% or even 400 people, can HR shy away your people will be upset, times are bad? No, we are not here to mollycoddle. We are here to take hard decisions. And I've done that.
Yeah.
I've done that, close down factories. But there's only one difference, that when you do that, you cannot shy away from that decision not to do it. One. Second, when we do it, we must do it so transparently that employees understand why. At the same time, if there is an employee interest to be protected in shutting down or asking them to go, we must give them. No amount of pressure that people will feel bad should detest us from doing that work, even if it's closing down. 400 people have to go, they have to go, period.
Right.
So I will only use one analogy, that in doing this, an HR person must have a mind of a surgeon. Sharp, precise, incisive, has to be cut, period. But the heart of a mother. Now, when you combine this two, this is not just playing with words, but you can do it. You can reduce numbers and make sure that employee interest is protected. I remember doing that in one place. It was around October, September of the year. We asked the entire 465 people to leave. But we did it with whatever was in our power to do it fair for the employees. Fair for the employees, not the best deal. best possible.
Best possible. Yeah. Yeah.
And that year, lot of people wrote back at the year end to say, although I had to leave, but the respectful way in which I was handled and the way I was explained why I had to leave makes it palatable. So
Yeah.
HR will have to do the dirty work. We cannot shy away to say, I'll be a Santa Claus when it comes to giving promotion. I'll be the first one, but when it coming to cutting numbers, let the line managers do it. We cannot play tic-tac-toe.
Yeah. Thanks, Akhil. And I will come back to a separate question around courage with HR people, but I don't want to poke too many HR people. There are about 85, 90 of them, and talking about courage, discourage me later from attending any other webinars. So I will not do that right now. But
you're known for courage, my friend. You're known for courage.
But anyway, but let me go to Neelam on a slightly different topic. And there are some comments here about business partnering, and I should say this, Neelam, that I attended a program in 1988 which talked about how to become a good HR business partner. Okay, and since 1988, for the last whatever number of years, I have seen many and more programs which continue to talk about being a good HR business partner. So since you were mentioning about the closeness between HR folks and line managers, I'd like to get from you a few tips as to as a HR professional, what helps in becoming a co-creator with the line managers. What kind of a mindset, what kind of attitude really HR people should take, and some tips on how do you do it really well.
Here I can only share from my experience of what I have done. And when we talk of partnering or co-creation, the first thing that I have learned is, as an HR person, first of all, I have to move from my own chair and go to the person, and sometimes even spend a little more time getting the buy-in of that individual. Even if I feel rejected and understand that the person is not buying my point, investing in saying that this is important, are you willing to look at me, and let us at least co-diagnose the thing and see where we are. And similarly, when anything is created or designed as an OD intervention or even as a workshop, then including the participants beforehand and stating the objective, and then somewhere also asking, are you okay with the objective, or should we redefine the objective? And so what is that and what is that you would want us to address?
Right.
So taking their inputs, and somewhere what I have also done is introducing the facilitator to the participants way before launching any initiative or change. Right. Saying that this is the person who's going to handhold, and do you sense a comfort with this person? And vis-a-vis asking the facilitator also that how do you bring in the safety, psychological safety and safe space. And most important thing is getting the buy-in of the top leader, because when we say partnership to me is equal. So the leader will also have to show that faith, time and patience, because no change happens over time. So a lot of work before the real thing is moved has to be done. And so that also obviously certainly includes getting up and knowing the business and the pain point of the business, where you can actually create the specific intervention.
Right.
This is from my experience as to how I have learned and also seen the benefits and the deliverables for the organization.
So I will come back to you, Neelam, because you spoke earlier about listening as a particular skill, and about co-creation now with the partners. But I'll leave the question with you and then come back, right? So I think somebody did comment in the chat box that that HR people are more prone to give advice than to listen to advice, and whether they are good listeners or not itself is a big question mark. So I'll come back to you, but I'll leave you to think about that a little bit. But let me go to Debjani in between, right? So Debjani, when we are looking at HR people to do some of these things, which are whether it is developing leaders, working very closely with line managers and helping culture and so on and so forth. HR leaders and HR function people will themselves have to develop certain very specific skills and capabilities, right? You can't do it without developing what I call new set of muscles. Okay. So what are those new set of muscles which you see we need to strengthen further, as a HR community?
Thank you, Bimal sir. And this is probably the most pertinent question because it completely resonates with me in this current environment. We keep talking about prescriptions. We keep talking about what role HR can play. Where can we extend our arm? What can we bring to the table? How can we do it better? But at the end of the day, my question to probably our own fraternity as well as our own brethren is, are we all well prepared to take that on? It's very easy to sit on a revolving chair in the middle of a cubicle and keep prescribing. But have we got it in us? Have we brought about that agile mindset? Are we still looking forward to delivering on a different footsteps altogether? Are we ready to reach out? Are we ready to collaborate and build that credibility first? Because honestly speaking, to me, a lot of situations where HR loses out is because HR people are either seen, and I'm sorry to be so self-critical, HR people are either seen as being political with a capital P, where unfortunately under the duress of what's happening in the environment, they become prone to move with the management and compromise on what they need to do by championing the people cause more. So that's one area where I think we definitely need to introspect and see for ourselves that can we get out of that politicking mood. The moment we are apolitical and we have a credibility to stand on our own foot, and as Akhil sir very, very clearly spoke, we are neither here to play mollycoddling role, nor are we here to run a beauty pageant. We are not here to actually win a popularity contest. What we need to come around is with a clear conscience that we can deliver the compassion to you, we can stand by you, we can extend all that you want to know, give you the weeping shoulder, be the agony aunt, but at the same time, when it requires for crisp action to be delivered, when it requires an absolute solid logic to be delivered, which is in the interest of both the commercial enterprise as well as for the larger good of the manpower, then possibly we are the best suited to do that job. Do we have that risk-taking ability? Do we have that belly in the fire to be able to take a stand and say for yourselves, bereft of what the consequences could be, I have my conscience clear, my logic is very clear that what I am treading upon is what is the solution needed for the hour. I think HR fraternity needs to learn this first and foremost, to be honest to yourself, to be honest to your function, and to be able to therefore deliver solutions where you don't need to keep looking at the back and watching out as to who is really safeguarding your back. It is you who will lead from the front. It is you who will take the consequences for your actions, good or bad. And my experience in my 26 years of career has been, sir, that in most times, if you have that courage to take that stand, people do realize that you are on the right side, and they realize the goodness that you bring to the table, and ultimately that respect takes you a long way. So that probably is what I feel my fraternity needs to really learn in this journey.
Yeah. So yeah, great. Thanks, Debjani. And I am certainly personally in agreement with you apart from other things. So Neelam, let me get back to you with that question I was talking about, listening, and in light of what Debjani was talking about, what HR people need to build in terms of their own mindset, conviction, and so on and so forth. This whole area of business partnering, and it requires deep listening and taking sometimes advice from others rather than giving advice, right? So what's your perspective? Where do you see HR people could be going wrong, or when you look at strong HR professionals, what is it they do really well to integrate stuff?
So in a way, Debjani ji has already kind of answered this, and I feel there are two things. One is the individual itself, and if there is a way the individual is behaving, is certainly coming from his or her own reasons. If you want to, as she said, if you want to grow, if there is a desire to add value, if you want to be seen with a clear conscience, so you will definitely get the courage to do the right thing. And maybe those who do that are eventually curated as great HR professionals, which we do have with us. And we have this in our panel also. But we cannot deny the fact that there is a deep and huge gap in the quality of HR professionals. There are a good set of people. In fact, I would say it is 80-20. Those who are only following the management and the policies and processes. And somewhere deep down, this is coming from their own probably lack of some knowledge or some desire or some reason that they will have to really reflect. And I would not want to comment on them, but certainly professionals who have good understanding of not only the OB and OD models and design, but at the same time understanding of the innate human psychology and the underlying factors of trust and dynamics are better to be in a place of internal facilitator and coaches to the organization, and are better equipped to also convince this leadership team as to how HR can add value. And those who do not have are actually doing nothing but following the processes and systems and a lot of things that bell curve should be there or not there, or data analytics, and without the deep value of how to actually derive from it, which adds value both to employees and to the business.
Okay, thanks, Neelam. So GP, let me go to you with a slightly different question, right? We've been speaking about HR capability and what difference HR can make and so on and so forth, and we'll come back to that in a minute. But one of the criticisms which HR often is faced with, that, and I will quote a very senior CEO who's a known figure, in the industry, so I won't name the person, but I will tell you what he told me. Okay, this was about a year back, around April, May, when this pandemic had just hit, and companies are locked down and all that. And he mentioned to me, he said, a lot of the HR people he meets, he said, they are great coordinators, but they don't bring any deep functional expertise, which can actually help, whether it is in change management or culture change or skilling, or like Neelam is saying, in specific areas of HR analytics and all that. And this functional expertise which HR needs to bring has often been an area of contention, often we've been criticized, saying, we don't bring deep enough knowledge. And in fact, line managers often say, Acha, HR kya kar raha hai, to main bhi kar lunga, kind of a comment, right? So I just want you to maybe, give us your perspective on, what are those few areas which I think, not just HR professionals, but, as a community, we can think about saying, how do we look at functional knowledge? How do we look at depth of knowledge? Because we are often, predisposed not to go deep into subject matter, and become generalist, if you will, right? So firstly, which are the areas where I think in the current times we need to have deep knowledge? And secondly, how do we build it?
A good point to discuss. Good point to discuss. So after all, our respect for the profession will come from our competency and our character. So I am leaving the character for a minute, coming to the competency. See, I'm trying to oversimplify things. We use our head, heart, and hands. Many things that we do with our hands can be outsourced, can be delegated, and actually somebody can challenge and say that I can also do. Probably if you can develop a few things which uses the head and the mind and the heart, and copyright those, have mastery in this, have commitment in this. That is, for example, when it comes to heart, culture building. Building a culture, developing a culture, nurturing a culture, leveraging culture, or relationship building. Building relationship, nurturing relationship, leveraging relationship, that can be one. When it comes to the, let's say, head, probably the strategic advice to the top management on people matters. I mean, they should look at us that, yes, I can give a strategic advice. When it comes to the leaders and line managers, can we go and tell them that, don't worry, we will help you in how to manage dilemmas, because we are trained to do dilemmas. Or when it comes to the talent, whether it is selection of a talent, or it is deploying a talent, or developing a talent, or taking the talent up, upskilling or reskilling. So ourselves, we are good at that. Last bit I'll tell you is the internal coaching and mentoring. If HR people are accepted in the organization as an internal coach and mentor, that means he's good at what he's supposed to do. So these are a few things I thought we can start with, and long way to go.
Yeah, yeah. Thanks, GP. So Akhil, let me come to you with exactly, or more or less the same question, right? Uh, very often I think, this issue of, like I said, functional expertise, and we were talking earlier about creating an impact and culture change and all that. At some stage in the career, I think, and this is not only relevant to HR people, but it is also relevant to other functions, that we stop upskilling ourselves. We almost talk about upskilling everybody else. We talk about reskilling everybody else. But, for some reason, HR, I don't know how many people really go back and spend, time and effort and this thing in doing a deep study, right? Attending webinars is good from a perspective point of view, that you get different viewpoints and but deep study and what would be your sort of input and advice on that particular aspect, that because the world is changing so quickly that we all need to learn. And somebody said there's a finance webinar and all that sort of stuff, but how do you do deep study?
You touched upon the crux, Bimal, that if we are seen as a common sense function, if line managers feel that what is the specialty you people bring, talking to people, just coming to some conclusion is a common sense, then we have actually not put any thought in their head that there is some specialization in the HR. I'm not about bookish specialization of Chris Argyris and which theories we talk about, and the two things that we have in our arsenal, and if we do it well, one, we are pretty good at connecting with people at grassroots level. Most of us on the call today would have walked the floor.
Yeah.
We know we are not sitting in our air-conditioned office 6x6 screen, and that's what some of the youngsters we coach them. We tell them, just don't sit to answer email. Go and walk. Be with people, and we are pretty good at that. Let's give ourselves some credit. So we know the pulse of the people, what will work, what will not work. And to earlier example that you're giving of shutting down a company or reducing 400 people, we know exactly what will happen. Why? Because that connection has given us a real feel of the situation, not assumed feel. Now, when you have that arsenal in your hand, you can actually sit on a decision-making table. This will fly. Don't worry. However difficult it is, it will fly. That gives line managers a confidence. The second part, Bimal, is of upgrading ourselves, upscaling. Actually, HR is, I think, a very rare function where there is a high level of networking amongst HR professionals. Not only just to have a drink and just to say hi, hello, and attend a webinar, etc. In times of taking a big decision, both you and I have gone and picked up a phone to a lot of our colleagues. I'm doing this. I'm struggling. Or I'm doing this. What is your take on this? What are the pluses and what can go wrong? So we have educated ourselves by what I call benchmarking.
Right.
Those of us who don't keep abreast of what's happening in the latest and only look at the cover of Great Place to Work and People Matters or any magazine and say, wow, this is now I'm so educated. What Apple is doing is now giving free cookies and also free Coke. I'm talking about real benchmarking.
Yeah.
What is it? And sounding board, using each other as sounding board. And there's one thing good in this community, nobody refuses time. And I'm not running down finance or marketing, but I know I've spent my life with marketing company like Unilever. I don't think marketing people go to each other to ask.
Right.
HR people go. I'm converting this into this. You remember the time when we were doing this pension changing over 20 years ago?
Yeah.
Well, we did not know blind leading blind, but we had the benchmarking power of collective wisdom which we can tap. And I think this is one thing we can really leverage upon and update ourselves. So when we go to line managers, says, this is what happening. Oh, incidentally, I spoke to XYZ company, ABC company, and ABC company, and PQR company, and they feel this, and they're doing this, and this is where they've had difficulty. This is how they succeeded. Your credibility is established. You're not talking out of common sense. You're talking out of data. You're talking out of some facts and figures and practices which work or don't work. But in the end, I'll take exactly what Debjani mentioned. Q, actually, you and I should vote for Debjani, with the way she puts in with so much of, and I will take exactly that quality that she demonstrated in responding to you. We must have conviction. And we must show we have conviction. If we are half-hearted, slightly, wishy-washy, it will work, why don't we give it a try? Nobody believes us. If we have conviction, and this is where the fine line is to be done. I think we don't have to be very polite in terms of being agreeable with everyone. If we believe in something, we got to pick up a issue. And if it gets into your nose gets bleeding, it is worth the cost, but we would have done well for the organization.
Akhil, I hear what you say, but I'll just add a couple of points. And this thing, I think my own view of having worked with a lot of HR and senior leaders is that we have, as a HR community, we may have all the ideas, we may have the knowledge, we may have the network. Very often we also have the pulse of the people, but our ability to create a business case out of it and our ability to present it in a manner which will help influence the leadership actually is not, many HR people lack there. Let me just put it. And that's a very specific skill which I think the HR community needs.
And Bimal, if I can add to your perspective, Neelam mentioned this earlier. We don't do selling of an idea.
Right.
We don't consult people before coming to an idea conclusion. We do selling, actually, other way around.
Yeah.
We come to a conclusion and we go and sell. This is good for you. Take it 3 times a day. Your cough will be cured. The ability to go and sound off line managers in advance. And I think the biggest thing is your CEO connect. If you don't have the connect with the CEO, don't have the buy-in, then you are fighting a lone battle. And I think that is the quality we'll have to acquire, and not political skills. It's the ability to go and be open to be considered a failure. Be open to be criticized to a proposal. I'm planning to do this. And I've done this in Shell Malaysia. And amazing how line managers from a different culture tell you that this idea will not work. Don't try it. If you tell us, we will try. Now, why won't it work? And this is the reason it will not work. And then you go back wiser and say, 1 minute, that reason is valid. We will not put that idea. We will amend it. So when you do that, you are also giving signal to line managers. Instead of the co-creation work that Neelam used, we are actually practicing co-creation. Now, here is one layer I would draw a line. We should not get to such an extent that we become co-aggregator only. Yeah. We should have our opinion, get opinions from others. And if we feel what we are saying is right, what we are doing is right, I think we should have the courage of conviction and ability to face a storm and go ahead with what we believe in is the right thing to do, rather than back away because the popularity vote is not there. I think one has to be very clear. The courage of conviction, people will see as passion. They will see as a pig-headedness. They will see that as a stubbornness. They will see it as a conviction, your determination. Let them give whatever label you want. Yeah. As long as you are clear, this is what I will do because this is the reason good for us, go ahead and do it. And then that gives you cookie points and earning credit.
Yeah, thanks, Akhil. So, I'm going to move, we have about 10, 12 minutes. So let me touch upon, a bit of a touchy topic, which, each of you, and let me go to GP first. He's generally quite, good at giving nice models to explain some touchy topics. Let me leverage his expertise in a way, right? So this is the question, and this is a question to each of you, and if you can just stick to short 1 or 2, bullet points on this question. See, HR people very often are in charge of, training of line managers, and there is enough and more research saying, the quality of line managers is not great. People leave managers and not companies, and so on and so forth. And, there's a lot of debate, and somebody's put here that, only 1 in 5 managers is engaged, and so on and so forth, right? But I'd also like to point out that, HR people themselves often are not particularly great managers. They are, and, this applies to them as well. They may believe that we can train other managers and coach other managers and so on and so forth. But why is there this view as well that, HR leaders should only help other managers and not themselves or their own community, because that is, that is where the change has to start, right? In a way. Yeah.
So what do you want, Bimal?
I don't know. I want.
No, actually, in fact, to HR, you rightly pointed out that our own team, our own competency, and of course, we are responsible for those four stakeholders. Those are employees, top management, line managers, and community. And that's all we do. So, we are evaluated, valued for the contribution that we make. So one is for our profession and our team. So that is one. The second is for the top management. They only understand value add per employee or productivity per employee. They will add. Line managers will only understand talent, whether you're given talent on right time, good talent or not. That's all they'll. Employees will always understand whether you do care and compassion, they will do. Community will only watch and see whether you're doing community service, whether you're doing compliances. That's all we'll see. Now, coming back to our own thing, I'm saying if you have to, like developing HR people ourselves and have this courage to say that I know I'm good at this, I can help you in doing this. One is values in the organization, culture. I'm good. I can help you in also making it good. I can help you at departmental head. He said, yes, this fellow is good. Number two is I am good at being agile, being adaptive, change. So I can help others become agile. The third will be I'm good at listening. I'm an expert in listening. Because listening is all about communication. I can help you. I can help the line manager, the HR manager can do. Third, I'm very good at unifying people. I'm getting very good at unifying people, including people. I'm good. I got this competency. I'm trained in this and I help you in this. And last is I'm good in empathy. I'm very good in counseling. I'm good in empathy, understanding people, understanding feelings. If I can do this VALUE, that is values in the organization, agility, the listening, and this unification and empathy. If first I have to develop in this and I'm good at this, I can deliver, then I'll be respected in the organization that this is a guy, he can add value to all of us.
Yeah. No, thanks, GP for that. And let me just go to Debjani first and then Neelam in that order. So GP in a way, Debjani has listed out a few things, and Akhil talked about a few things that we're right. I think I am still, in a way, very deliberately asking each of you that question, saying that it's very easy to say, and if a line manager comes to HR, and I've seen this happening enough in my career, line manager comes and HR people will say, see, you are not good at A, B, C, D, E, F, G. Your rating is this. You should go through an assessment center. You will get a report. Now you should develop these qualities, right? But when the same thing comes to HR people themselves, somewhere they think that they quote unquote know it all. And the question I'm asking is that how do you not just become a good facilitator and a trainer and pointing it out to other people, but also do it yourself? How do you do it? Because it's, we all know the list of items. The list of items is there and, very nicely spelled out. But how do you actually do it? What is it that you need to do? And, as a senior professional, Debjani, maybe an example would help.
Bimal sir, I think we are a very self-limiting race. Let me tell you this. We have all of the good things within us. We have the ability to do it if we put our minds to it. And most of the time we can probably do it better. That's my personal opinion. But we spend so much time thinking that we are adding value by preaching and, continuously pushing things down other people, that we lose track of the fact that possibly we also need to visibilize and market some part of what we also are doing at our backyard. That's very, very important. I've always felt that for HR to earn credibility, vis-a-vis whether it's the line manager, whether it's the CXO group, or establishing a connect with the CEO, it's important to demonstrate that while you may be good at telling people what to do, at the same time, some part of your time and some part of your energy should definitely go into also demonstrating how you're actually applying that to your team and what are the ways and wherewithals to be able to bring that to the notice. Right. I'll give you one very important idea. In one of the town halls, I worked for an American company called Bentley Systems. Same guys who make the cars, but I headed, their software division for Southeast Asia. Now, we had a wonderful program called the steering committee meetings, where each of the departmental heads had to actually demonstrate on a quarterly basis any significant step they would have taken to bring about some change towards improvement or innovation. So it was called the I&I syndrome. You either had to show improvement in an existing area or an innovation which was out of the context in your own individual department and showcase it. And HR was actually put right there in the forefront to demonstrate as to, you tell us first, because you're the guys who are always doing most of the talking. And believe you me, it was the test of a lifetime. It was when we were put to that test, we realized how tough it can get. But I'm very, very fortunate to have got that opportunity quite early on in my trajectory of career growth, because it honed our skills. It told us that it's not, as Neelam also rightly said, we keep talking, we don't listen enough. And half the battles are won by just paying heed to what the person on the other side is trying to portray to you. So some of those very simple, very common sense logic, which we take training programs to inculcate, can very well be learned if you decide to do things in your own backyard, then just keep pushing things down the throat and the necks of others. I think that really is important. We need to visualize, we need to market our own skill sets and our ability to convert that into executionable strategy within our own departments.
Right. Thanks, Debjani. So Neelam, follow-up question, I think, just this thing, and you spoke about this, the whole HR business partner and the co-creation and listening and some great, this thing. Would you have an example of, how what Debjani just now spoke about, how an HR function or HR person has actually created a role model for line managers or other leaders to follow? How do you create an example which is visible to other people? If there's anything in your experience, either you have done or other people have done, I think that will really help us.
So there was a typical scenario where in this organization, which I will not name, but sales, service, and parts, three departments who are supposed to work actually together, they had no understanding or working or exchange of ideas. And so there was another example also where quality and R&D, they're supposed to work together and deliver projects on time, but they would not deliver projects on time. So here what was done was, with the help of line managers, the entire teams were brought in together. And then some interventions were done, which ended up in opening up of teams. Right. And every team member stating that, yes, I can do this, but I do not do this, which means as simple a service person says that, yes, I have sales lead, but I don't pass it on. Right. And then they also said that these are my reasons, which are also systemic and cultural reason. It's not only me. Sure. And then we had this understanding with the top team to come and address those issues there and there. So there was some confidence that was built in the team that going back, if they follow these systems, they will get this support from the organization, change will come. Right. But what was most important was the commitment of the HR there and the top two leaders to say that every 15 days we will come back and we are taking this homework home and we will resolve and we will come. And when that was actually done and was followed for 6 months, we clearly saw that the project time deliverable reduced, also the market share increased. Right. And then not only the leaders didn't stop there only, then they pulled in HR and said that how can I better connect with my team and do this intervention with my team down the line, because this was done in peers and colleagues. Right, right. So then that followed up further. And I also want to say something here to your previous question is why HR is not looking inside. So somewhere I feel that, necessity is the change, is the mother for change. अभी तक काम चल रहा था and we were probably evaluated कि PMS time पे किया कि नहीं, salary time पे बता कि नहीं numbers. But with the changing scenario, now we are no more looked at, from the same lens, and the expectations are absolutely different. So
Beautiful.
now all of us will also gear up and say that, now if I have to do it differently, mujhe karna bhi padega. And then I think we'll start looking up to mentors like you and upskilling and reskilling ourselves.
No, so
Bimal,
what you're saying-
if she was
Huh?
if she was your boss, you wouldn't be getting much rating, Bimal, in the
Correct,
future.
exactly. Yeah, but Neelam, what you're also saying is that, I think if I take a, sort of a slightly cynical view of it, what you're also saying is that जब तक झटका नहीं लगता है तब तक हम लोग कुछ करते नहीं।
Take up
That's
जरूरी होता
my
है.
words, those are not your words, so it's okay. Anyway, so Akhil, I'm going to give you the last word, okay? So you already spoke about, culture change and, upskilling and some of the areas HR can contribute in. But, given the fact that, COVID has come back now, with a vengeance, if I may say so, and, the uncertainty is back, in the last 3-4 months, people were starting to get just about settled and, feeling that things will be better and all that. But now with the current situation, at least in India, things are looking very unsettled. Okay. And while there is a lot of debate that, it'll start dipping in the next 2 months or 3 months or 1 month or whatever, the reality is that, it's almost like, a second dose of, hard hitting, kind of a thing. What is it that, HR people would have learned from the first wave and the previous year, 2021, which you think they can carry over to 21, 22 and possibly do it better? What is that one thing which you think, we can do even better than what we did last year?
Good question. If I have to synthesize to just one aspect,
Yeah.
I would put it as the desire to be in a very predictable situation has to be let go. We are very comfortable with what is predictable, what is under our control. And what last year and this year has taught us that sometime when there's nothing in your control, nothing is predictable, yet you have to shine. So if we come out of one mindset that we were looking, and that's why a lot of people say, when will we go back to normal? There's no normal going back to normal. Normal is dead as we knew it. But we still want to crave, many people want to crave to go back to normal. Instead of saying that is over and done with. So this ability to shift gears completely and say, this is how the life is going to be from now on. Can I make the best of it?
Right.
And GP Garu referred to this in a word like agility. These agility are not fancy words. It's actually the ability to change, adapt, and do something what is required. Rather than saying, nahi, itna hone se theek hoga. But the fact is that if nothing is going to be predictable from now on, and this is not only a fancy talk, but our ability to deal with as things happen with less data, less information, make the best of what is available and take a concerted decision at that point of time. Now, people will say, oh, this is a very transactional thing you are suggesting. Oh, you're not thinking of projection in future. Forget future. If we are so smart, we would have planned COVID 3 years ago.
Right.
Let's be real. If there are some short-term decisions that to be taken, which are only short-term, there's no shying away that we should only do strategic work, big-term, long-term. And one thing, Bimal, I would add in the end, and this I've done from 94, so it's about 27 odd years. And whether it was in Motorola, Shell Malaysia, or IBM, you got to start with your team. Rather than tell line managers, I'm skilled at this, I'm good at this, we are here to do this for you, come to me when you have a cold. I'm fortunate, I'm sharing experience, so being don't count it immodesty. Get with your team first. Give them the comfort that you will be there when things go wrong. If they make a mistake, you will be their safety net. And let them lose. Let HR be tigers. Let them lose. And this is where, and you will see, it may seem like a confrontational approach. It's not confrontational. It is assertive approach to say, we know what we are doing and we will do it. Now,
Right.
if it means getting into fisticuffs with line managers, a friendly fisticuff is always welcome. Of course, it has to be within limits. But the team must feel that we are a tiger team. I was just plain lucky and fortunate to have a team like that. And we saw the impact on business. Line managers would work with this tiger team like a glove. And when that happens, you don't have to tell them, I'm good at collaboration, I'm good at marketing, I've gone to this HRBP program, and I've gone to this course. You've got to show that you support your team and let the team be.
Right.
Let them lose like tigers.
Yeah. Thanks, Akhil. So, I know I've got about 5-6 minutes above time. So, for the audience, I think, regret that. But Akhil, Debjani, GP and Neelam, thank you very much for your views. I think it's been a lovely conversation, and let me hand this back to Shefali again.
And you heard it, the
Thank you,
catch
and
well.
you've been
Bimal.
wonderful. Yeah,
And he heard
absolutely.
it, the cat, right, Debjani? He heard it, the catch well.
He handled the cats extremely well, sir, with the whiskers on.
Tigers, not just the cats, but the
Tigers.
tigers and the tigresses.
It took
Well,
a lot of
I
this.
thoroughly enjoyed being amidst all of you. Thank you so much for the
No, it
opportunity.
was a great listening to all.
No, it was a good conversation. Bimal, thanks to you mainly.
Yeah.
You led the discussion very seamlessly and very nicely and took it west. And I like the way the passion with which Neelam spoke. BGP
Thank you,
Garu,
sir.
we got to learn a lot from her.
Yeah. So I didn't compete with her. I changed my gears.
Thank you, sir. And Bimal, sir, yes, you were great.
Okay, all yours, Shefali.
Thank you, sir. So I think our audience were enjoying the session like anything today. It is one of the lifetime experience having Mr. Bimal Rath, Dr. GP Rao, Dr. Akhil Busrai, and top of it, Debjani Roy and Neelam Dakar. So it was a wonderful session. We all had a lot of knowledge sharing. We had a lot of learnings, of course, from the industry experts, industry professionals. Thank you so much, HR India, Mr. Samar Mahapatra, for organizing such a
Thank you, Samar.
panel discussion.
Thank you. Thank
Good
you.
initiative.
Thanks,
All of you.
everybody.
It
Thank
was
you
a
so
great
much.
job. You have exceeded
Everybody.
expectation
Thank
of
you
the
very much.
audience.
Stay safe, stay well.
Thank
You
you.
have exceeded the expectation of the audience.
Thank you.
Great job.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Stay safe.
Great.
Well,
Have a
good
wonderful
evening.
weekend. Thank you so much, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.